we need to angle it a little bit more?
Yeah,
so that
angle it a
you
little.
can be seen, Greg, or more back a little bit? Ryan's missing.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's good.
But you're on.
Craig.
I know, it's just.
Yeah, yeah. Just have to go to.
You gotta go on.
There.
That's good.
Okay, everybody mute your phones and come over. So it is. And I'll be, wait a minute, I better control it. Or, not now, but I don't know. All right, okay, all right, welcome up. Thank you. It was a really nice presentation for Alice Nye. Really. Up there. Okay, yeah, got it. So it is.
Or that. Hello.
This everybody. Yeah, I did, and I'm not. Bumping out. Well, it might be that we just go ahead and not worry about it.
What are you not worried about?
It's recording. Well, I'm just doing it controls on this.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see if that happens, but it is 4:04 and I'd like to bring to order, the September 12th meeting, the select board for our continuation of Parkview workshop / retreat. It was not,
That's all.
yeah, nobody was on, it's just,
Erica said.
nobody is locked out at all. So roll call vote, those in attendance, Pat Galata, Ann Harrison, Brian Solacey, and John Rouse,
Yes.
and Becky Chase. Here we have guest in attendance with us, Susan Beckman, and we are being recorded by Zoom. Okay, so, Greg, do you want to go ahead and get off for this?
I'm sure, so if that's, we're coming for this stuff. procedures. That's set up, summarize the discussions that you had then. The number of action items that were identified as part of that first session. Second page of those minutes. Talk a bit about those. With the plan, I would say goes to the top. About this town, discontent. Desire to address that. The budget process. Here. Talk about today, building up on that, the goal is to talk about what their overarching strategic goals are, specific goals. Then we'll give you like just 4 overarching items. Certainly, there are many others that you can choose from. So talk about that. So I think it would be helpful to speak out quickly. Discussion about the last meeting. Discuss. But they're talking about what we're goals.
Brian, did you want to add anything before we get going regarding that?
Yeah, no, I read the minutes, and yeah, I guess the 7 actionable items, we've all got the dog in that fight. Somewhere that we have to deal with. There aren't any specific dates on some of those assignments, but we should get on top of it. Just an observation or two in general as I look at the discussion. And it's good that Susan is here because she was front and center with, I think it's a concern or observation here, and that's with regard to the master plan. I've been on the board now for a couple of years, and there are various issues that come up and come around, etc. And if any of you have read the master plan in detail, there is nothing that doesn't come up that hasn't been touched in that master plan. Maybe in a broader sense, when you look at, say, 40B, 40A, those are very specific types of projects, but they're all dealing with housing. And you go into the master plan and look at the housing concerns and what we should be looking at, that issue is there. Affordable housing, what are we going to do about it, et cetera, et cetera. You can go down the list of everything. And I think that the master plan should be central to the discussions that we have going forward, because a lot of times we sit here and reinvent the wheel. It's already been discussed. Any particular topic, you go in there and say, well, and Susan, I know, I think you've had a number of various forums and discussions about it. And you can go in there and say, oh, here are the 2 or 3 issues that people thought might be a good idea to perhaps solve this. And I think it would save a lot of time if we all read the master plan in detail. And us, we've got to know pretty much all parts of it. But even the various boards and committees, they don't have to read the whole thing. I don't understand. I mean, I would like them to. You know, if they can go to their particular part, and I think later on in our discussion we'll say what are our expectations of these departments. If they go to their part, they've got kind of a plan or objective or mission that's kind of spelled out in the master plan. So I think that we really need to take that document to heart. And look at it as kind of overall guidance, because when was it put together? 4 years ago? Right, it was several years.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, to be honest, where it's at, because COVID hit before it got a final, I think, adoption or something. I mean, there's something
It's
missing.
got a balance on the whole.
It's not.
Yeah, but there are a couple of pieces that are missing. I'm looking for like an inventory of all of the town-owned
Yes,
assets.
I got it.
I don't see any of that, et cetera. But we ought to perhaps think about trying to push that along and finalizing it, because it's a real good guideline document for us to follow in our discussions, at least to form, whatever we're talking about, get a basis. This is what's been talked about.
Right.
Have you got something to add to that? And it probably needs to be here, but it's 90% of it. That's my observation.
Okay, Anne,
I think I'm trying to follow the discussion and
okay, Kathy, wanted to say something on that?
Yeah, just as a reminder, Sue Brown has actually, I think it was, where she was going to just update the status of the items in the master plan. So I think what they're looking for, she got that in work. I don't know what the expected completion of it is, but I 100% agree with what John just said. It's a helpful tool. And the only thing I would add is that there's a lot in there that may not be under the direct purview of the select board. It may be a different board. So I understand the next step of the master plan was supposed to be an implementation plan where the action items in the master plan or the objectives were divvied out to the respective boards that should be leading those efforts, and then timelines, et cetera. So, 100% agree with what John is saying. I could use some help digesting which areas are where that select board should lead versus there are other boards that are chartered to lead. So as to not get confused.
And one of my concerns regarding the master plan is that it was crafted prior to COVID. And given that it was done a little bit ago, have there been any significant changes where in the different areas of it, of the master plan, do they need to be readdressed? And Greg, is it every 12 years we're supposed to redo a master plan? Is that what it is? Do you remember?
Well, there's no requirement.
And so given when it started and then the amount of time prior to its adoption and whatever's transpired, we're not that far off at this point from needing to start again. However, to John's point,
we don't need to start. What
We
we need to do is we back to start earlier.
right, and find it exactly. So we don't want to and I think that's one of the reasons I so loved what Susan will talk to us about later is that it should help to not reinvent the wheel. Additionally, we talked about you and John doing a new communications policy regarding emails and communications around that. There are as well as guidelines for presentations for the select board that Kathy will do. These are all things that we can, or items that we can implement and have as protocol going forward. When Susan was chair, she did come up with quite a few forms, which were very helpful. And that it's, if some of these items in the guidelines for the select board, included in the policy book. Trying to review policies, I think that could be very helpful in streamlining. You all are going to do that. The ones that, the existing ones, probably. But we'll come back to that later. So just if we can implement, when we're doing policy updating, if we can also incorporate, in terms of getting communications, how we handle that. When we do that word before earlier, have to use somebody, thank you, performance reviews. Those types of forms should be included and updated as needed. But the less that we have to either fly by the pants or make up at the time, I think the expectations are more clearly understood by the members being reviewed, as well as what it is we as the board or a board is supposed to be looking at. Does that make sense? Any further comments before we want to touch on anything else before we go on to the memorandum? Okay, moving right along to memorandum. So starting with advancing confidence in and credibility of town government. Now, first of all, we know that there will always be a group where there will be some people who we just cannot. And everybody, please, thank you. That's it. All right. So Greg put down SB listening tour as part of Heart and Soul program and ongoing conversation for corners, etc. What is Heart and Soul to me? I know I can ask that, Greg, Heart and Soul.
That refers to that program.
Oh, all right. I'm not familiar with that.
Giving you some references to that. To the dive, that is of interest. It's basically very similar to what was done at the beginning of the national financial surveys, community outreach, focus groups, public forums. Not just start from scratch, getting earlier, but we might leverage some of the techniques for focus topics. Housing certainly. Position itself.
Okay, so those are like the climate change under 3.
Right, so you can use that listening to the bands without details yet, but we can incorporate some of the so techniques. The multiple process of trying to engage the community on some of these other topics.
Regarding engaging the community, does it make sense to have an independent group try to, when was the last time a survey was done regarding concerns about accessibility of select board, responsiveness, along things like that? Does it make sense? Is that something that would make sense?
The electronic survey you're talking about?
I don't know, put it out there. And
I think we get a lot more from walking the walk than asking questions. We could ask questions and we could find out what we need to want, but I think doing I don't feel warm and fuzzy when somebody asks me a question. I don't think this person did years time. I think it was pretty, yeah, here's busy work.
I agree with Andrew. Lost the first time. First. Approach it. Listening. Every time you go out, you want to watch. Everyone's got their own little agenda. We might not touch on this question. I think that more personal approach. That creates an approachable, it covers.
I agree. I actually went out and tried to ask some constituents who, did not, when Greg asked for a call for feedback from the town on our top priorities, there was some people we didn't hear from. I was kind of surprised. So I called them up and said, you know,
Are these people you personally know?
personally know, yes.
And that's my concern, right? We're just talking.
Well, I don't know, they're not friends per se, they are acquaintances that I met through the election process. I got to know new people in town, but they were people who, from a variety of backgrounds, who were willing to give me feedback, and they didn't know me from anybody, right? So what I heard was that, well, my takeaway is that part of the reason the town, certain members of the town feel disconnected, if you will, has more to do with our, the way we accept feedback, or the perception is that we are not accepting of feedback, that we can at times come across as defensive.
That
It could be, well, I know it wasn't directed at one person. Language and tone is how I would summarize.
Yeah.
And what you just said, Brian, rang a big bell here. The personal touch that some people felt that the reason they love living here is because they could touch government. And they felt for whatever reason they couldn't do that anymore. And they referenced how select board meetings used to be conducted in the pre-COVID, right? And I have no experience. I didn't attend any select board meetings pre-COVID, so I couldn't quite articulate, understand what they were referring to, but all of you probably have and better understand that comment. But I just wanted to relay. I think COVID kind of interrupted what was a natural communication mode in the town, and that's kind of my takeaway, is that when you get electronic, it's much more difficult to manage tone, and the feedback is different, and so we've got to kind of work through that.
It's that point.
I'm gonna go to John first, and I'll come back to you. John?
Well, I'm kind of interested. I know that there've been a couple of surveys that have been done. I guess they were electronic on the parking deal. We saw some recent result there. I don't know what they had to say about the response to that, but that was a target group.
Yep.
And didn't Parks and Rec do something with regard to the, what their priority was in terms of,
So we actually have one survey.
and I just thought, who's run those surveys? I'm just curious what they had to say, but I mean, I tend to agree. I think we've got to be more personal, and that's why we've got this conversation corner thing going on, and we just have to reach out, but I'm curious what the folks that were running that, what their response was. They get comments that were, is there anything we can learn from that?
Isn't Sue Brown sent that?
So again, during the master planning process, there's approaches we used, there was survey.
Well, their forums, there were electronic surveys,
there were
a little everything.
Surveys. That way, just bad.
I'm not even sure how you do a survey. It's not like you've got 5,000 emails. Or I should say, I don't know how many voters there are.
They're a little like, I think it's 4,300.
It's what they-
Right.
4,000 votes.
But you don't have an email call.
However,
We have
there,
emails maybe under 2,000.
but still, that's a starting point.
Sure.
The other way is,
And you put it out on all the various communications.
and you
Yeah.
can email through, tax bills, and, not email, send it out in tax bills.
Sure.
However,
Okay.
um,
It still needs to be more personal. Okay.
right, and this is where, coming back to advancing confidence in credibility. So what I'm hearing is that it really needs more, we need to get back to personal or what was perceived as a more personal, approach.
That's really odd, because in fact, there's much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the yin and yang of this, right?
Yes,
So you definitely need more people, and I think people want to have this option.
Yeah.
I don't think they're losing.
it's really hard, as we all know, that the social media, a lot is lost in the translation, whether it's in front of a camera or texting, email. It's, at least you can have inflection on a meeting, but it's still not personal. And there is an element of anonymity, to being behind camera, or if somebody doesn't want to turn the camera on. That's their prerogative, but, I
Yeah, but it's not them behind, not having a picture. It's us giving a picture that we care about.
right, and that's what's really hard. I think that in a society where we've all become numbers, and in many ways losing that personal aspect, that, if, how do we go forward in a way that truly will enable the community, and feel accessible, that we're accessible to.
I think John's approach, we're actually,
Absolutely, but I've got a question. Right now, meetings are hybrid. Anybody can show up here, correct?
Yes.
I mean, at one point, you could only be if you were invited, but now you can go any way you want.
Right.
But I think the perception is out there, oh, it's on Zoom, so I'm not gonna bother to go down. And I don't know how many people showed up at most of the select board meetings. I tend to think,
Yeah, it'd be 0 to a packed room, depending on.
depending upon the issue.
it was never zero because there was always.
There was always, you are absolutely.
Yeah. So, but,
Actually, yeah, it's such a hybrid. Says only,
right,
on the board members, applicants. No, applicants, well, not. The agenda. Members only, applicants to the public.
but that's up to the chair.
That is what we have.
I think consistency would be good. However, the boards, do have a certain latitude, the chairs, in how some of them have a little more latitude than others.
I mean, if you're not saying that only people who are invited are allowed to attend, whether in person or on Zoom.
I'm trying to paraphrase what I got on the agenda.
Are people allowed to attend on Zoom?
Oh, yeah, oh, anyone can Zoom,
Okay,
anyone
okay,
can call,
I
but
understand.
as far as in person,
Yes.
it's gonna be in this room, and I believe it's, the chair is uncomfortable with how to run the actual hybrid.
Needs to be 60-20.
Right.
And one of the chairs and meetings. The other piece of feedback that's related, I think, to the perception of not listening is something we discussed in the past. When we get feedback, and it's not just us, other boards, we get feedback from multiple sources. get feedbacks by people verbally saying something at a meeting, or they send us an email, or they hear something across, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We get feedback. We collectively don't do a great job of summarizing the feedback received and telling the residents what we're gonna do about it, and whether and it's not just a select board issue. People attend the forums, for different subjects, whether it be, Parks and Rec, making stuff out, whatever. They give verbal comments and then feels like it goes in the black hole. I think one exception I've heard is the CPA dealing with the extremely well, extremely transparent on all the feedback that was received, and that was a lot of work, right? But, right,
Yeah.
I think that they did a great job. However, I've heard from multiple different people, a variety of folks, that when they give feedback, feel that it goes to a black hole, they're just not sure what happens. And it especially happens when it's verbal interaction.
Well, no, I was just going to say that regarding feedback, I think that, and this is a misconception, perhaps, on feedback is not necessarily an action item. So it is information that we listen to. You don't have to act on it.
That's correct. However, if the feedback that I get from residents, we're not, and I say we, it's not just the board, I'm not always clear when we are going to take action versus not. Or if feedback, if some leader, let me just be specific. There was a Parks and Rec meeting on the new field on Pine Street. And I heard from a couple of neighbors who said, we expressed these concerns about the field on Pine Street, safety, blah, blah, blah. Is anything going to be done or not
Regarding
their comment and concern? So if their concern is not feasible to address or not going to get addressed for some other reason, great, but they just want to know.
right.
And so when I had a side conversation with Cheryl and said, hey, just so you know, this is what I'm hearing, but that's what I'm talking about. It's called feedback loop. And to your point, Becky, not everything results in an action, but people don't feel like their feedback just kind of goes into a black hole.
Well, and that's, and Ann, I'm sorry, I'll go back on that, but, well, but in order to close that feedback loop,
That's a very labor intensive response. In other words, for the field, for instance, I only want 10 spaces. I want 25 parking spaces.
Yeah.
What's it gonna be? You go back and forth, and at some point, somebody makes a decision. You don't know when that decision is gonna be. And you don't know exactly whether they're gonna settle on 10 or 25. At some point you are, they need to be heard, and, and the fact it has to be acknowledged that, yes, we heard what you say. I don't know that we're necessarily going to decide in your favor or not, but of course, people have expectations. And they say, this is what I want.
right,
And, I really hope that that's exactly what's going to happen. In fact, I want you to promulgate this position.
well, and in addition to that,
It's hard to know when feedback can say, and this is what we're going to do about it, because you're not sure exactly when you're going to do something about it. Because it's all goes into the dumps into the planning process. And I think coming back and saying we acknowledge your position and we've got it, to do more than that in most instances is very hard.
and sometimes it's already been addressed. Many, many times it has been addressed ad nauseum and put to bed. And this is where, so, someone jumps in, now a lot of information has already been gone over regarding those fields. And so people are coming in at the 11th hour. I think that's the question of how do we then, and who actually closes the loop? And that's coming back to what you said and what you said, They want to be heard and acknowledged. So how do we do that without constantly just running around and doing busy work, but not,
I do have
okay, well,
So what I hear in some of these meetings is when a resident will say something, the well-meaning person who's running, says, I'll look into that. Okay,
That means something.
well, that means they took action. And if that action is
Yeah.
documented, and the person doesn't get feedback, I see that as a problem. I think that's fair to say, don't say you're gonna look into something, if you're not gonna do it. So just live up to your word. That's number one. But number two,
before you go to that, maybe they are looking into it, but are they supposed to respond to every single person?
no. What I'm suggesting is a summarization topics. We received feedback at the last, discussion, at the last dispatch discussion, we received this type of feedback through email, blah, blah, blah. Here's what we're doing about it. We received this type of feedback from a number of different people. These ideas are not feasible and we're not. It's just a summarization, not each individual piece of feedback that comes in. The reason that could be helpful is because when somebody comes into the middle of a conversation, they already know what's been discussed.
If they
During the the second presentation, yeah. This is no different than corporate life, and I understand it's an ongoing.
It is, but in corporate life, you have very specific protocols, and if you're told this is the way it is, as public servant, I think it's a bit different. But my question here then, okay, so we are now having to do we come up with a new means of how we have and run a meeting? Because we have open meeting law, we have protocols, we have bylaws that tell us we don't have to listen to certain things, we don't have to do certain things. However,
So certainly as part of their recapping or setting the stage of the discussion, give a quick 3-minute recap of where it's been and a summary of the comments. But you could do that as part of every agenda. Not everyone's going to go to every meeting and they're not going to do that. But it will be in the minutes. At least there's a paper trail.
And I will say the number of meetings
If you
that,
have a sort of standard format or copies, background to include, there's a summary of the comments that we received.
One of the things that I mentioned is the fact that the CEA, or whatever, posted every piece of email in the section.
Well, so a formal public hearing requires, so that is the difference. So every comment before which quasi judicial order
Okay.
is part of the record. So there's a requirement.
exactly.
For everything.
Yeah.
I was inundated every day.
Right.
Okay. And to have posted right, forward, right here. God bless everyone.
So it would not be feasible for us to have some place on the website where we posted, just forwarded emails we've got.
There are so many emails that come and go, and as well, plus, as we each, as a liaison, as a chair, the information that you get is limited. What Greg gets is even more so, and not all of it really serves. Thank you. I was going to say merits. serves as well. I don't, just because somebody submits something doesn't mean they have to check it out.
Technically, our fault for the records. Okay, request. We take staff time to post it.
Well, you can always submit everything to, Cricket, posted in there. Letters and emails.
Ma'am, just an observation,
Regarding what?
generalities, just bring them. If this is going to be covered as part of the governance project that was proposed, what first of all, is that the case, and
That's all that's part of it.
okay, so do we not need to solve it here?
We're not trying to solve it, we're just identify what we're going to try to solve.
Before we move on, there are two things. I do think that it has merit to have select board, available to me at some sideline. You know, it can be 1 hour on a Thursday evening or something like that, 5 to 6 on a Thursday. Simply cannot make yourself available for everybody. Or something along those lines. How does everybody feel about doing, in addition to the coffee corner, which I think is fantastic, I love that, going on with that, but Kathy, what do you think about doing society games? Yeah,
I think Thursday works because, yeah,
it's late.
It's open. it's in line. I don't know.
Exactly.
So,
Right. Do we? Right. Okay.
That's on record too. Right?
So, is this something we can rotate, just say, I can do this, I can do that?
yeah, good road.
Try to get the regular schedule ready for Thursday every month or whatever you want to call it.
And no more than 2 people, so you don't have any minutes.
It's interesting, so, I had an opportunity to meet with Chubbs. So I was advocating. Chief shows, I did, but do apparently. Yeah, something like that, so. Coffee, whatever. And then, sitting there with another. It doesn't matter which member, as I said to him, you do it, I'll sit. I'm not sitting alone, it's something. And go out there. We could rotate something like that, maybe take it apart. Do that, and
Love that.
so Cheryl's out there one time with me or whatever, and then we take a department head, that way we show super much on. And it's so much more informal than sitting down here. Get out
And speaking where?
in this building, get out of this building. All right, do a seaside,
Of the school?
We have to be careful about that. I just.
Well, the reason I like the idea is that one of my other concerns was that, I think we discussed it now with the select board trying to rise above pollution, right?
Hmm.
And so if we're the only ones who are like, sometimes idea of department heads to directly hear feedback, especially on the topic that they're responsible for. Select board, rise above.
and to that, we also act as a bit of a problem too. Because
Yeah,
I had just a concept of the show, which I just resonated with, which is that constant garage. After a while, news and come on was harsh. And then it got into the area too. Some on my case, that's Chuck is just creates personal touch.
And that's sort of one of the things that didn't touch on in the last meeting. And Greg mentioned about having, various, can't blame jet lag.
Sure.
Okay, jet lag, but department heads, kind of, not kind of, but being more, involved with providing information, giving updates to us. And it also, in addition to letting the department heads more accessible to the community, we get to know them better as well. And I like that idea. And
So rather than saying every third Thursday, let's try every Thursday. One department, head, one, select, member of the select. And, announce it ahead of time on the website, on Facebook, in the print.
one issue, some of the department heads, they're still working because it's a late night town hall.
This is work.
Well, there you go, that's true.
Yeah.
This one,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's fine.
okay. And do it cricket, what else? Cricket
Website.
time, yep,
Okay. Chuck said something was sitting back burner. There was Culver over here, switch over there. Supporting it. I mean, I'm always
Yeah.
approached by the pedestrian way. Now I have the answer. to Chuck. Big side of thing, but so often there was something could say, ask a question, get back to. Ask that. Sit down. I was like, good, at least I don't look at it.
so we, you know, spent a good amount of time on this, and our takeaways are, more accessibility. And, and how we responded to feedback and close the feedback. So then that ties in with some of the action items follow up, how we make sure we're doing what we're saying, such as closing the feedback loop. I like the idea of the 3-minute recaps / summary on topics on the agendas. So is that something that Debbie is able to incorporate in the agenda spread, or how do you think that would best be done?
Well, it's, all of that.
Right, but who would actually physically do
So
that?
I think the suggestion was that there are meetings on topic, like a project, that was removing that meeting would, or there was. So it wasn't so much for general meetings, like select board meetings, that was my intent.
So in other words, if we're working on the, for example, spectrum. Okay, all right. That makes sense. That,
We would want it. Do we want to have focus whole meeting on what's the topic in order to have?
no, we don't, I don't,
But no, if, like, for example, on Wednesday, there's a meeting on the Pine Street. Right, so at the beginning of that, they just did a 3-minute update, and here's the feedback, and here's what we're doing about the phone. Close loop. But I wasn't suggesting at the beginning of every board meeting that there's a recap.
well, and it's not just us, it's something that's useful to any board or maybe department.
Well, so for the, at your last meeting, we had a continued discussion on traffic
Yes.
calming. So at the start of that, since you asked that, there's a few things that I asked. There's maybe pieces of feedback that we should.
Good. Topic by topic.
Yeah, talk about. Good.
And if as opposed to every Thursday, why don't we do 2 Thursdays a month? Because we also have meetings on some Thursdays. So, and it's easier, I think, we can always increase, but by doing 2 Thursdays, it's not, we can give it a try and see how it works. What do you think?
This is
about
5 to 6:30.
5 to 6? 5
Okay,
to
right.
6:30?
Well, who's the opposite? So it used to be 6:30, it's now 6:30. Yeah, 5 to 6:30.
Mine works for me.
Is that? All right.
All right, first and third Thursday.
And then.
But the thirds are when if we don't have something on our, yeah, I think so, that's sometimes
All right.
that. And so we are currently at, what do you have? So, yeah.
I don't think we're gonna start next.
No.
Figure out who would.
That's a great schedule. We'll talk to you tomorrow. On that.
So we will start looking into, that would be starting on the 13th and the 27th of October. Right? If you go ahead and start there. So that we don't leave this lingering. This, Greg, or do you talk to Diane? You should I talk to Diane and see if Seaside 1 is open for that? And if we can, let me, we said, 5 to 6:30.
They don't have to have an agenda.
Yeah.
No, I can tell.
Right, no, I'm just saying, do that, I would take it. And we wanted, I'll talk to Tiffany about that. So I'll talk to Tiffany and Diane. And then we can,
And then it's, the topic can be, you just have to have the department head there for that.
right, it's
But
different,
that's not saying, hey, this is public health week. That's it.
right,
No.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
It kills two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
It takes care of your occupancy of, it's conjunction or. Post
So I still like John's idea though, just because of the
Oh, that's.
conversation or whatever,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the 5 to
Yeah.
6 timeframe is great for people who either don't work a day job on Thursday or can get out of work in time to get home on Thursday. So for people who
Or
work,
don't have anything at home, we could 5 or 6 days.
yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
okay.
So we might, so multiple venues or opportunities are good, then you try and reach everybody.
Well, let's start with this, I think, rather, it's easier to expand than to come back, I think. So, and we call it conversation corners, leave it at that, is that,
Oh, the Thursday,
for the Thursday?
conversation corner at Seaside.
How about just conversation at Seaside? Conversation.
Well, we got the signs, it's
Right.
conversation corner.
Oh, right.
I would put it outside, building,
Yeah,
make a little plaque with, whatever the department head would.
yeah, I think that's good. All right, well, that's good. So that's communication, or rather, this is just trying to reach out, and that's, so now going down, select board listening, did you want to look into heart and soul? That Greg and the ordinance.
That, and you said again, that's sort of, it's from the ordinance,
Or foundation,
oh, the ordinance foundation.
community heart and soul. I encourage you to, I'll send you a G.
Okay.
Okay,
That'd be helpful.
Template for agenda topic presentation, greater participation by department leaders. So what do you mean a template? I see, what we were gonna ask, Kathy, were you going to work on that?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. That I want to run by everybody before. Templates, but my bigger question was, I'm telling them the student governance, work, I figured for, and submit that as, consideration. I don't get to jump out front of what we might be asking Susan. So, it's up to you.
Didn't know what we heard.
Yeah, okay. So we want to talk about any templates along those lines. We can do that with Susan.
Okay.
Okay.
Just refresh my memory.
So,
What sort of presentation?
so for example, we got a presentation from the Water Resources Committee. And for topic-oriented presentations like that, sometimes it's helpful to give those leaders guidelines of what we want to see. So that it's not too much, not too little data. A lot of times we want to see some of the same things, timeline, overview, issues that we help with the risks, there's some common areas in, or the other slides that just say, hey, just make sure you cover this, and then from a content standpoint, detailed content, send this ahead of time, but here's all the ones, just kind of frame it a little bit for them, because the volunteers may not be familiar with, like more.
But it's also to help so that, at least in my mind, that Greg is not always having to just recap that type of information. For us, we're getting straight from the source, and if we have a question about that, then we can go into it. And I think that would, you're still in touch with department heads and whatnot, but it's hopefully freeing up a little more time for you to do more of what you need to do. Okay, so formation of an executive team of department leaders, retool theater meetings, reestablish citizens advisory groups, TA. So, and that's something Greg was talking about with, in right now, the way our, the departments work. There are a lot of different moving parts. If we have a smaller group, but Greg, I'll let you talk about that. That's
Well,
more.
never finished that with this. System. Not a lot of collaboration. That's not too much. It certainly challenges that are needed. We don't do a lot of troubleshooting. Pretty exploited in our site. Our next benefit is to expand there. Very visible. Engage online. Also, people are creating lives.
You have a meeting with your department heads, what, every Tuesday or something, or something like weekly, right?
No, we thought that was.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask, this really though, and it's under our number 3, but doesn't that really fall, I mean, it's doesn't that really fall under you?
Yeah, this. It fits in this.
Okay, yes. And so regarding the reestablished citizens advisory group, TA, when was the last time we had that?
Pre-COVID.
Yeah, and that was effective.
But what was it? I'm not even.
Yeah, it was 4 or 5 citizens that I had.
Oh.
Just talking about their perception. their read of what was going on, feedback.
And that's a great idea because it ties in with what we're talking about. If you have people who are, yes,
How is this group formed? Is this just people that know or, kind of turn over over a period of time or looking at the same folks all the time? Yeah, very informal, but it's pretty much the same folks all the time.
Yes.
Okay.
say again.
The mentors or advisors.
Yeah, I did it as a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got this back. How.
Yes.
And
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm interested. Stars or broader.
Are these appointed by the select board? Aren't
Very helpful. Other issues.
That's something you can reach back out to some of the people.
Yeah, you could put the same board together.
You can just talk, you got to email, say, hey,
although post-COVID, it might be nice to have some fresh perspectives. So not just what you had before.
Yeah, if you can go to one person.
Okay.
Just.
So what would we like to have those names to you? Let's have a date, date by. So, can we say there are 5 of us? If, why don't, not me, but if each of you gives Greg a name, or do you want all of us to? 5 names, 4 names?
Two next.
Okay.
All right, good. So why don't we do that with Monday within the next 2 weeks? So, right.
And then you meet how frequently?
Once a month, right?
Once every 6
Once a month.
Once a month.
So they can talk about what they want, or you can talk about, this is what I'm looking for, some information, what you, goes both ways.
Goes both
Okay, very, how long? Okay,
So would we reach out to these people, explain it to them?
that's
Or is
why I
that
asked.
something?
No, give the names to me.
That's what I think too.
Yeah, but I need to talk about things, to say.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about, I can ask.
Yes, yeah, that's what
All right,
Whereas if you would have a problem by giving their names.
Can I ask Greg to send all of us or talking points so that we're all giving the same talking points? That, or, and that way we're all.
Possibly just a list of like the last people.
Sure.
So today's the 12th, we're doing this within the next 2 weeks, let's say due by 9/26. And we'll just send us out an email of talking points, we all do the same thing. That sound good? You know what,
And that's what makes me a little uneasy, is if we go to people and say, well, we're thinking of reorganizing the town administrator advisory committee, which would be interested, and then you let her, she never hears another word.
Well, and that's why I was not necessarily thinking that we reach out to people, because if we have people we think might be good, it's not a commitment, and Greg reaches out to them.
Your name has been suggested.
Yeah. And, or, it's not a commitment, it's not something that's.
But once you talk to somebody about it and they have expectations.
That's why I think we don't
So
call
I like Dan, but basically, you can send out, we'll give you a list of names that we think might be interested, you can reach out to them and say your name is suggested. you might be interested. You can call through the names if you want to deal with it, if you don't want to.
Well, and you don't even have to say your name has been suggested. I mean, Greg,
That's your problem.
That's my
Right.
issue here.
Okay,
Okay, so we'll simply give names, each of us 2 names to Greg by Monday, 26th.
but Greg, you gotta give us some ground rules so that we have an idea about money. Put on that. Yeah, give me some. I assume it's someone who's not in town government in some way or another, they're already active. That's fine,
Okay.
yes.
So going back to what John brought up, and Kathy reiterated, was on item 4 under A, align goals of master plan with work plan for departments, boards, and committees. The discussion on that was, as you said, Kathy, Sue is going to be checking on the status of some of those items. I'm a little concerned with some aspects of the master plan right now. Would it be better for us to make sure we all take, and we can't big document. Should we ask Sue to do that for us? It's, let's pull it out.
So I imagine that's the plan here.
Well, I just want to make sure we're talking about the same document.
Hold it up. Look at this, John's got it.
I printed it out, it's about 50 pages, I don't know, 71 pages without appendices.
Focus on the summary.
This one,
Yeah.
and then, so then the visioning. And this is-
And you printed it in color.
What's it, what's it?
Your boyfriend, printer, I forgot. Okay. So on that topic item, how do we want to go forward with that? We want to discuss this more later, it's 5:05.
So get an update on how Sue is with her work, but I hate to get in front of that.
Right.
And if she's already helping with ourselves, what is our responsibility versus the planning board, it would be really helpful to have that. But I'm not sure what her update.
So is there somebody else we should? So could we possibly ask Gary Russell, who was involved with that as well, or is that Susan that we could ask to kind of give us, all right. Maybe we could reach out to Susan Beckman and ask her to give us an overview on the status. Okay, does that sound good? Not necessarily today.
No, I'm just saying, let's talk about this meeting.
Okay. All right. I mean, reach and policy, but. Right.
Would love you to focus just on this.
Okay.
On the details.
I want to first make sure that those, these are right ones or not, or if there's something that's. I would love it if you just did A, B, C, and D,
Okay.
and then there's we have G or substitution.
All right.
Just, we're going to get involved.
Yep, we are. All right, revamp policy on correspondence. We did say we want to do that, correct? And that will going to be Ann and John.
There's some guys.
Okay, so we've got. Does everybody agree we would like that done? Brian,
Hmm?
John, Ann? Well, it's how, it's this, it's about, when we get protocol for receiving, responding emails.
What I'm saying is that there is not currently a policy on correspondence.
That's correct.
Right.
We're gonna have.
Just making sure. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
They have a blank sheet of paper.
Madam Chair, I think Frank's suggestion was that we just first get alignment on the A, B, one upper level.
Yep.
And then,
Yes,
I think that was, that is,
yes, that's,
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for patient Kathy. Pull me out of that rabbit hole. Okay, so, advancing confidence and credibility. Correct. Preserving the small town character while diversifying, maintaining, growing small commercial base. I hate that word character. And I can say that because for every single person out there. However,
so I think the last time we discussed that, we talked about housing, right?
Yeah.
That was.
well, that goes back to
So
that.
this, right, so this was your clarification. Is this phrase coming directly from the? I think it would be
Something
helpful.
like that.
Certainly, talk like that, there is a.
it's there, it's there, but, Greg has combined 2 or 3 different elements of this, which is a little confusing to me. In other words, I would put as the overarching thing, okay, preserving small town charm, or culture, whatever. And there's a number of other things that feed into that. Yes, housing, and I would put that as a separate item. The commercial tax base or finance in general, maybe that, yeah, that might be a separate item.
You mean as opposed to B, they are,
That's C and that's D, and then climate change would be D, and then economic or financial discipline. Yeah.
So in order to agree with what you previously said, John, I think it is important that we let the master plan drive how we frame our objectives.
And in fact, the 3 major points of the master plan are,
Diversity, well, right now, we're specifically talking about housing. And I thought the two, I was trying to figure out, I thought the 2 items were diversity of housing and affordable housing.
that's a subset.
I could struggle with
It's just
that.
diversity of housing, would include affordable.
Whatever it is, until we change the master plan, and we'll talk about that later. I think I'm a little bit uncomfortable, changing the objective. I wish I could
say that again, what objective?
in the master plan, there's a specific reference to housing. Whatever it says, I think that's where we should focus. As long as that is in the purview of the select board. Understanding that there are other boards who have other responsibilities. That's where I would start with clarifying our objective.
Yes, because some of B really does not fall under our purview, is what, and that's
There's a-
where you go. right?
Well, I do want to pull the rug out from under all the good work that's done on the master plan. That we should, until we decide we want to revise something in the master plan, it gives us credit.
And your B there focuses on that.
Well, and again, do we feel this is one of our goals? So preserving the small town character while diversifying. And in terms of preserving small town character, that is in the master plan. And I have such a problem with that because that did come forward, planning board at one time. When I think when we first started discussing the master plan and defining character.
So I did actually find it. John's correct.
State
It
policy.
says support a, yes,
Yeah.
support a diversity of housing projects throughout the town. Right, that's what
Yeah.
that's what it is. And then the question would be specific to the select board. How do we do that? What would be the actions that we would want to take to do that? And while some of that may fall into the planning board, there may be some actions that we may need to specifically take by either grading up property, moving one asset from one place to another, like you do,
all those.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I thought.
Okay, so I guess our agreement, B is one of our primary goals.
Yep.
And
I heard an argument that it should be B, C, and D. I, which doesn't seem to have it. The problem, if nobody cared about the character of the town, there would be many fewer problems with diversified housing. So I think we have to consider that and commercial development. So I think we have to consider those things. In fact, I think it's our board who is in a position to consider them all together. So, yeah. Okay. Long would say yes.
okay, so are we saying we want to take out? You're saying keep them all together.
I'm saying that each of them is easier by itself, and the result will be much less satisfactory. We need to consider the impact of character of housing, the impact of commercial development on both housing and character. Yes, keep character.
May I suggest a free swapping of the three elements? So the master plan says support the diversity of housing options. That is the focus. In this statement B, the focus is preserving the character. So could we swap the order and say, support the diversity of housing options while preserving small town character? Small commercial taxing. That would be the objective is to get more housing and more development. I was just going by the master plan. I'm just, right now, this one says housing.
But there is a section on.
There is another item that maybe it's my confusion. I thought it was starting housing, but,
No, yeah.
The LCD is one of
right,
But, okay, let me bring this back to, is this one of our primary goals, or do we want to table this one for a little bit more working on the master plan, getting more information from Susan? I don't mean tabling it now, but I mean.
I think we can agree that this is a goal. I've heard no one say that this statement does not reflect something that, this statement, everyone is saying that this statement does reflect something that we
Yeah.
consider important to us. So
I,
I don't think we need to table it. I don't think we need to go into great detail about how we do it.
just recognize.
yeah, I think all of the ideas are here. My organizational line says the top line is character of mansions, charm of mansions. What feeds into that? Housing, natural resources, diverse businesses. All these other things feed into keeping the town in.
Okay, I'm gonna pull this down.
And that's why I look at all of them and I say they all feed into that.
Okay, so we're in agreement that the B is a goal.
Yep.
Okay. All right, adapting to the challenges climate change is bringing. This is a huge one. We had a super high tide just now down on town hall. And I personally feel that this is a primary goal to at least try to understand what we're facing. Potentially.
yeah, I agree, climate resilience, I think it was the phrase we used last time. I saw some feedback from, neighbors and folks. One, interesting comment I thought was, is that too narrow a focus? Because they also have concerns of, how we maintain our town assets in general. When it's not that wasn't knocking on our door, so I just wanted to bring that feedback to the board. Is it, infrastructure, asset resilience, that could be driven by factors other than climate change? I don't know.
So some of that infrastructure, I don't want to factor all just infrastructure.
Right, so.
Like the water, like, you know, the water pipes, that's not really a climate change issue, that's just,
Exactly, so, and the residents have a big concern about that.
well,
Well, actually, it is, and I'm just gonna say this is my research is falling out. But this is part and parcel with what Chuck has been working on in terms of the culvert here. Now, remember the big flood up on, Norwood Avenue. And so this is part of the component to address that, where the storms cause flooding uphill. And to increase culverts all the way up, or we need to address this first. So all the people who are, yes, so all the flooding upland from that, and that's part of why the pipes along School Street have to be done now. It's all there. So to a certain extent, we are looking at some aspects of the already. And maintaining our assets. It might not be a super visible thing, but it is.
Comment on and realize it's on the horizon, and as we get plans, plan accordingly.
Well, so I think I think Becky just said, it may not be visible to residents. If you go to other town websites, they have climate. It's very visible, what is doing, what untested, where not. Well.
A
and this
lot of it is
goes
on there. A lot of it is on there.
It's not under the umbrella of climate resilience.
That falls under, and that's, say again, everything, and it does, it's a big broad umbrella. Okay, so do we agree that in terms of adapting to climate challenges, climate change is bringing, are we happy with that wording? Do we need to,
yeah, I'm happy with it, but I think the key thing is, gotta react. But just changing here. To Kathy's comment, there's some projects, maybe we ought to have a section in our website that deals with climate related projects.
Yeah.
And I mean, Greg was listed, Rotunda, and everybody has an opinion about that. That's one thing everybody has an opinion
Yeah.
about, and there are concerns, and it really is the icon.
That's the counter.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the
well-
icon, and,
well, that
focus.
the town, and it's the elements of the town, the yacht club built, the yacht club built their facility, so. And
So-
Rotunda was built, was because that view, exactly, right, view was obstructed, and so the townspeople, the Rotunda, the program, okay. Now, 524, and maintaining fiscal discipline in uncertain economic times and many pressing needs. I think that's, in my opinion, regardless of economic times, that's what FinCom does. That's their job, and they do that. So I'm not sure how that.
So there are things that we can do. And in the details. Fewer things that are paid by taxes and more by fees.
Well, yeah, I think one thing that we constantly have to push on, of course, today is what you have is to have a look at shared services across the board. Okay, I don't know how this health deal is gonna work out. I know that we've got some money to work with in a year or two to figure out, okay, how's this health issue gonna fit together? But we've got to look at that.
What is that?
Shared services.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we've got to look at that. Part of the discussion I saw with the fire department, we've got a gap in people, and is there somebody else
that form you've got, that's been done numerous times. That's been,
Yeah, I can see.
well, and again, that, the shared service has been. And then
But you got that, or we got any?
there are a lot
It's not small.
Hmm?
It's not small.
no, I'm just saying that the town has looked into that, from a variety of whether we regionalize it in school, we've looked into fire, we've looked into department, sewer, there are a lot of,
So if I could offer a suggestion on that, and on this, regarding shared services, some of you should run one, they are something, it is okay to constantly, not constantly, but periodically revisit, because the technologies and the techniques change, something that not made this mistake 5 years ago. I think this is
Okay, it's not, it's not
And-
this meeting. I think it's something that we
So-
should raise,
I think,
have discussion on this.
yeah, I think that's an important topic, and I feel that item two here is a bit narrow. It's focused on what I would call bread and butter day job of income. So at our level, I think we need to clarify maybe our operational strategies, whether or not they leverage shared services. You know, I think we take the conversation up a level. But this feels like, you know, the day job of income of town hall. So, like Brian's point, we need to be looking more strategically at how we drive savings and continue to improve or maintain services and those strategies for what are really important.
okay, so. We've all agreed then that we do find these 4 goals. We're in agreement, these would be our primary goals. Does anybody have any other goals that we've not touched on with these 4 or that we see as sub goals under the name?
Projects,
John?
I mentioned that, maintaining and improving infrastructure through industrial industries. It's sort of listed under climate change, but there's stuff that we have, there's certain perception in town that the town never maintains safety, but it's falling down before doing this action. I'm sure it's true that it's a fact, but, part of what we do in that area, just maintaining the infrastructure, one of our goals. And part of the implementation would be to highlight the work that we're actually doing. Done. The fact, you know, School Street, what are we thinking about doing about that?
In terms of the climate,
No, not its climate, but just making sure that it has a roof. Pick various town assets and look at them and make sure that in fact, money is being spent on them in an appropriate way.
So we got last finance report that was prepared at Springtown, we mentioned a facilities master plan. What is that?
Greg, that was something, wasn't it, Chuck was,
So we can get the funding for the budget. So that's,
So I would suggest that that would encompass what Ann is referring to. So our first action. Facilities or assets, you know, master.
That is the same thing. Or it's not the fact that in the past 10 years, Well, one of the things that's currently under discussion is the state of fields. And that there is planning going on. And I don't know to what extent. I heard there was school side, but, is the town actually planning to expect on the church fields? And mentioned that we were looking, you know, I don't know if it's your progress on Pine Street, on Pine Street side.
Yeah, just have to have a wish list of what they want, and what they've accomplished in the last couple of years. Solid.
I guess the facilities plan will take care of
Well, six,
what they want, and somebody can, yeah, but if they could put together something,
well,
what we've already accomplished. there's, you know,
Part of what we're talking about with this, though, in terms of asset management, facilities master plan, these are also items that do come under adapting to the challenges of climate change. Yes, they do. If you're talking about the rotunda,
No,
we don't replace the rotunda, town hall where it is. The bath house, we need that. These are kind of long term, but what I'm getting at is that rather than going into the weeds of these right now, as I had done earlier, would you like to break that out as a separate?
I would like to bring it out as a separate thing.
But that,
So strategic focus, maintaining infrastructure, ensure long-term viability.
I think that would really resonate with the residents, and I think to address, I guess, concern when we look at the climate resilience. Now, these are going to overlap. Everything, so this should be overlap, intersection, and integration that can happen, because we'll want to look at the useful life, right, of these facilities or assets. Are they going to be underwater? Right, before we develop that master plan.
Right, we're looking at how to. Yeah.
So this whole thing for that is.
Maintain the
so
road.
I'm gonna pull this back. So Greg did have that, as John pointed out, under D5. So are we saying we want that, take the facilities and update that? We're gonna
Put that out.
pull that out under what you said, maintain infrastructure and facilities. Is that, what am I missing in that you said, Greg?
I said maintaining infrastructure, ensuring long-term viability.
Okay,
Sometimes.
all right. Okay, so we do want these to be our goals, with that in mind. What do we do next with this, that we've said, yes, these are our goals?
So one suggestion I have is looking at improvements or tools that we already have in place, which would have some accountability or responsibilities, because they're probably already doing something, and this would be an opportunity to focus their work so that it aligns with what we're trying to do.
And the suggestion is where, who does that, who finds out what committees or boards, departments are doing
So,
that.
Greg,
Did Debbie do that? Okay, so do we want to have a, let's look back to this date. What seems like a reasonable amount of time, that's a lot of kind of looking over. So we get 4 weeks, that's too much time. Yeah, we're about to start with the next fiscal year 23-24. Say again,
Let's be realistic. What we're asking.
or Debbie.
I just want to be clear on the actions. The actions, take a look at these 4 or 5 goals and see if they're in town.
Or boards that are already addressed.
Yeah.
All right, so that brings us back again to September 20, Monday, September 22nd. I mean, September 26th. But with that's, just a little, some of the dates. Town hall's closed, so looking at the 12th. Greg, what do you?
Which about the meeting?
About just getting the information be emailed out, and then we can,
Even just a draft.
right. Okay, it's week of the 26th, all right. And that just an email sent out, regarding boards or committees that touch on or can. Correct. Okay, before we go on, I did want to just circle back to something. We asked that select board packet be out for by Thursday before a meeting, and your memos by Friday. And so is that, and that you have, is that okay for her to do that? Okay. And it looks like we have the only other thing I see with that, was that you were going to take the lead, work with Debbie, regarding the communication thing. And John, you were going to do that?
And I were gonna together a communication policy.
And I was. Pretty nice about what their goals and overall responsibility and goals for the year. Yep. Okay. Okay.
Every time I start drafting that, I think about what I was doing. Time for several busy ones.
Yeah.
And why are they bothering me with this?
All right.
Do you want some? Is that something that Greg might be able to?
Well, before you move back on Greg, I just want to hear again from the board, so that I have something that I can put in an email saying why we think this is important for them to take time out of their lives.
Well, it's actually, I'll come to myself at the end. Brian,
So I'm gonna say,
John,
I think, I mean, I thought about this, I saw that, and that's like a sign of blue sky. If I'm a head of a board and you're asking me this, they're gonna say, oh, how am I gonna deal with this, all right? If you ask each of them to read the master plan, because the master plan touches on virtually every board that exists in our town and provides them a mission. Now, I'm not saying it's the right mission, maybe things have changed, but they will have a starting blueprint to say, that's good. First of all, you don't want to document this more than one page, you know.
right.
I would just say, I don't want you writing more than one page of stuff, because it's gonna take you too long, and we're not gonna read stuff from 25 different
It's
boards.
more related.
Well, yeah, I know, it's 35.
It's a lot.
But if they look at the document look at it, if you're in housing or something, you can look at just a housing issue. And you can see this is what the town has said feels is appropriate, and how does that fit with where your committee's at today? And they should put something together fairly, fairly quickly.
And if what we're asking for is, we're not a fiscal year goal for so July to June of what they see as their goals for that year, correct?
Yeah, so I did 100% agree with what John said. I mean, what we previously discussed was we have a lot of committees and boards for a little town, and it is tough to get individuals to serve. So one thing to look at is, we have too many. I can't answer that question because I don't know what they want to do. So I think that's how we started the conversation. And so where we left it was, well, number one, they should be able to quickly on one page say what they're doing. And number two, to John's point, it should be aligned with the master. So
And if they just ask everybody to write a full page on what they're doing, we're also asking them to read a 7-page document.
They don't have to read the whole document, the part which pertains to them.
How do you find the part?
They
Mayor,
should.
if I could just finish, I think the point of the exercise was that they clarified what they're doing with the resources we have, right? And if they can't, in 10 minutes, no, after a meeting and a discussion, then maybe we should put them on pause until we can get some alignment about what they should be doing, because they're taking town resources, which include town hall resources that provide them with support. And they are at a premium right now. So I think we started this discussion because there's such a pull on town resources, and we need clarity around what everybody's doing, and do we put any of these teams on pause?
We're asking just by the existence.
That is that's an accurate statement.
So does that fall under maintaining fiscal discipline?
The fiscal impact of the welcome committee is not,
I didn't,
the fiscal impact even of the big boards. The zoning board of appeals is going to use a fair amount of money, the planning board uses a certain amount of money, but it's petty change compared to.
But we have like this.
Okay, I'm gonna stop this right now. And what I think we need to do is, come back to this. Before we ask you to do anything else, we need to discuss this further. So,
what did we cover next?
yes.
We're again.
Okay.
Okay,
We
let's, all right, we've got our 5 goals. We are in agreement with the 5 primary goals. And back then. Yes, thank you. The 3 of your minutes.
No. This is so helpful.
So top of mind, and I just love notes I wanted to finish on this. I think the overall point of the governance project that we're trying to look at is twofold. One is community engagement. Second is looking at town hall operations and staffing and the ability to answer the questions. So I think the key here comes down to the broad sense that I got from this meeting is there needs to be a governing document, which I've heard agreed to is the master plan, which needs some work from its conceptual stage where it was 2 or 3 years ago, particularly with a post-COVID environment. Looking at this master plan and saying, where are we? What is the status of the groups that are working on it? But using that as the organizing framework, that's what it was meant to be, organizing framework. This is what's meant to be the implementation plan, and through the roadmap is being the framework for these discussions. Because at the end of the day, when you care for all the things in the master plan, and you dovetail that to the budgeting process for the town and the capital planning, what you have is an ability to create a narrative for the community that explains why. it comes. So I would think job one is just, again, my goal is to share with you the ideas that I have, but more importantly, to try to focus on what is the most important thing that will help advance you in your work to mission. That gives you some of the ability to execute on this strategy and goals that you've identified. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of pieces in here that tie together, but if you start with a master plan, here's the current status where we are based on this. Here are the things that we are caring for at this year's goals, and to your point, it's not rewriting the plan and saying, you know, according to what our master plan strategy is, here's the things that we're working on. Are these the things you're working on? If not, what are the things that you're working on? Just making it a very simple check-in process, not recreating program. So I think taking a step one, my recommendation would be to take a look at the master plan. I can work with Sue Brown in terms of the updating, where things are, and we can do a presentation of here's what this is. So I think to me that might be a helpful starting point, because if you look at everything we've talked about, if I connect, these are the goals that you said are important, and here's how the master plan play into that. Now let's talk next steps of definitives and what I call tactics, which could be simply as what are the templates, what's the process, how do we bring it back to use, and then tying all that together with the final piece, which is the communication framework, and then use it as a framework because it isn't just one thing. It has to be the basis of which all of your decisions can be promulgated throughout the community, as well as internally on boards and departments. So it becomes a very clear narrative. So overall, in my observation, I've left the board watching living through COVID in really hard times, you know, for being all of the things this town has been through in the last couple of years. We deserve a chance to pause, take stock in what's happening, and plan ahead. The natural ability and want for any board is to make impact. But it's very hard when you're doing like a buckshot, that having some organizing framework that allows you to say, this is why we're making this decision based on that. It'll give us a chance to look and say, are these things still accurate? Are there things that might need to change? But it'll give you a discussion way to kind of look at it that way. So that's sort of after today and a little bit that I've heard up front, I would suggest that would be starting strategy points. And I think getting that done in the next couple of weeks. Going from there in terms of then detailing, okay, based on all of that, what are the top priorities in terms of deliverables and things that we need? We can do the templates very easily and all that, that's not a big deal, but really what is the guidepost for those towards? So that's just.
Yeah, I think, and then if you and Sue can do that and then come back to the board.
You want to stay in the next 2 weeks? What are we, our plan to be?
I'm just saying it's something that I can work on the next 2 weeks. Plan and plan for when you want to see results of that. So I can work.
It could be like, you know, get that advance of whatever it is that we meet again, so we have time to digest the information, right?
Well, and yeah,
Yeah, so on us, future agenda discussion makes sense.
I would probably just suggest that there would be discussion. Groups or
So I think
So we need a little bit on how that goes.
Yeah, that's a moving target. So I assume you're looking at, and after reading the document, I've read this several times, kind of gone through it. It's not far off from where we are. It really is. You gotta superimpose COVID, But I think that's an addition rather than changing much. It's additional consideration. As you're not anticipating major.
No, this is the one that I call it a check. Check, you know, here's your master plan is written. These are the things that we've been focused on. And as I said before, you know, the last master plan before we did this one was 20 years ago. And we go back to that 20 years, content wasn't that much different. Well, we know what the topics are, how you execute.
That's my impression. It would be good if we can compress those timelines. Government moves so slow. That's why you don't have to do this every 5 or 10 years because you have the same story. You're still struggling with the same problem. But if you work more efficiently, maybe you can shrink those timelines for all dealing with all these problems by a couple of years or something.
So I think the issue is that where the master plan was
Yeah, there wasn't, that wasn't.
that was a project. We just didn't get, COVID kind of put the work on pause, and the town didn't have an opportunity to put together a timeline for a lot of the activities. So I think a lot of the boards and committees looked at the master plan and said, hey, we can go take action on this, and just organically did what they thought was best in line with the master plan. But there are some dependencies that if you actually plan it out, that you could, John, to your point, get things done faster with a
And bring us
oh, and bring it
to focus as opposed to being reaction. Yeah.
So we had written, I don't know if it's part of this, information and strategy that talks about interdisciplinary discussion, boards and the third parties. It talks about taking a step to doing every budget season as an opportunity to connect to master plan with a precursor update. Here's where we are. Here's where we're going. I was my favorite part of budget report was it was so clear. You know, this year we're doing it, next year, 5 years out we're working on this, and it's very specific. Knowing full well that it's going to be 5, 10 years out, it's a little dicey, but it gave you a roadmap to say, okay, I feel good because I know I can do this. I'm almost suggesting that what happens here when you have plans, it becomes like a document. And it ties to the work of the committees, the ability to tie these things together. So that at the end of the day, when everything hits the fan, which it typically does, and crisis happens, it's going to happen. You've got a foundation. And the implementation of the master plan has been that of the document that allows finance committee, planning board, all these places to come back to. Say, this is what our citizens said they want. And we were exhausted to the end, between the vision of all of this stuff. And trying to lay back, doesn't mean things don't change, doesn't mean that, you know, it's not going to be complicated. But you just agreed on the very much. It'll take me a little time to sort of figure out the best way to do it, but I like to be direct, clear, and try to give people a sense. There's no reason why everybody's got to read training by pages. Feel free to read them. I do encourage people to do that. But if we can lift the conversation and get this board into the goal of what we've always wanted to be a little more strategic versus tactical, it might be very good. And you have to play that. So if that's an agreement where I can start, I can be writing up and how I can share updates with you weekly or through Greg or however you want to do it. Talk about that and just sort of get sign off. Is that any normal?
And
Looking forward to see what you have.
Brian,
Sorry.
it's just like a, yeah, for me. I mean, we've been talking about this in different ways. About state. That's fine.
I think, and I think that the deliverables as we say will be decided once we kind of get everybody.
So, we are from a governance standpoint. Responsibility. With other boards. So how do you anticipate, we're happy to do this, but obviously other boards are engaged in the conversation and have some accountability responsibility. At what point, do those other boards get to enter into the conversation?
In terms of the updated master plan.
Yeah, I mean, like I previously said, we can have this discussion where, they're creating those words around on what is the course just things, so I don't want to cross any.
Well, and I would certainly, I mean, part of this process is. Right, so I think my first stop is around.
Okay.
I mean, I'm pretty, I've been pretty.
Right,
So
so,
not to create. For boards already.
and so, in this public, obviously it's a public meeting, but do other boards already know that we have engaged? So there's a planning board. for 30 minutes. So we're not gonna, have this discussion with them, but I'm just trying to understand the overall approach for bringing in other.
So I think part of this is a good question, because in my mind, this should be an initiative. Something that is. So. So I think that. Together, that's something that Greg and I talked about just in terms of. In here. So I think that the importance of this is to allow a little time for Greg to work on the position. Everything that is done should be done within the context and what you're trying to accomplish in terms of objectives. And this isn't meant to be everything in the world has to be cared for. We're starting with the point of the framework, things are going on, but preparing for the work is starting.
I don't want the work to be misinterpreted by other people.
Right. And we have to be very clear about it.
And that's something that can be stated as well.
Well, it shouldn't come as an introduction, right? Before any work happens. There should be an introduction. Step. But very sensitive.
Anything else? Right. Is it good? Okay.
Sure, what the nodding of the head.
I know.
Yeah, vice chair.
Just looking at schedule, I think this discussion, these are very large discussions that our ordinary meetings are quite packed. Right. So I think we need to agree that we're going to be regularly talk cycle. And perhaps we should put in a date for our next meeting.
Right, and that's where we talked about doing was it the third Thursdays for that?
Third Thursdays and fifth Mondays.
Third Thursdays this week.
The tree
I tell you, it's also Manchester.
Well,
There's a problem. But I'm gonna go with the trees thing. But I don't wanna make it a habit. I mean, not the trees.
is it the Manchester Club? The third Thursday?
Yes, I'm every month.
There you go. So that, so the fifth Monday,
That's okay, but it's only once every 3 months.
But we could take that one just as putting a stake in the ground, saying we will start this discussion and we'll move forward.
well, this coming one, October only has 4 Mondays.
August.
It's Halloween. I never know.
Oh, yes, all right. And,
So we've
but
got,
I don't think that gives a lot of time.
we've got trees on the 15th and we do something on the 29th.
Oh,
September.
Good idea. That's a fifth Thursday, just like fifth Mondays, they kind of ordinance.
Okay.
Susan,
A lot depends on where she ranks around her topic, so I'm happy to try to get that.
What are we talking about this year? Doesn't work.
We'll do it. So Thursday, the 29th.
and would that be a 6:30 thing? That's what we're-
Fine.
Okay, so Susan, we'll wait to hear from you regarding. So you can check.
And Greg, maybe we can speak tomorrow just to.
That. I cannot do the 29th. I'm so sorry, I have a commitment that I cannot get out of. On that day. I don't think that's what he said, there's enough time, so.
Is there an opportunity?
October 6th.
Well, but then we run into other meetings, so other, right? You know, I will. Yeah, there's an option, Brian, that's tough for you.
4 o'clock. What?
Could we do Thursday at 4:00? Which, I mean, let me see.
6th.
I cannot do the 29th at all, but the 6th, would that possibly?
Yeah.
Susan?
Yeah.
So would you? For the 6th? And that's Thursday. Sorry, everybody.
That's it. 4 o'clock.
4:00. So request.
Can I be something if I might say actually?
Right. And we will plan, how much time would you like for that? Perfect. 4 to 5. Okay. And once you let us know, we can check with Diane. Debbie can check with Diane on that.
Like the spirit of able to trees, for the first part.
Right.
That's it. The time is signing up.
6:30.
6:30. And just for what you said, Brian, it does say that ZBA hybrid meeting for the ZBA, all others, applicants and public will be on Zoom. So. Say it again.
Yeah.
Well, that, right.
Crazy.
Want me to ask Sarah about that? Let it go.
Yeah, this, nothing really, this next Wednesday is really more controversial.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Second. Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Brian, probably Brian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ann, yes, Kathy, yes, and Becky votes yes. We are ended at 6:05.
Oh,
All right, thank you all, Susan, thank you very much. Big
We have our conversation tomorrow, and it's at October 23rd, 24th. I find